of the audience, has anybody here ever heard of me or my work? Yes, we've got some people. Yes. So cool. For anybody who's familiar with me, that's nice. For anybody who's not, no worries. I'm just going to tell you a bit about myself, and we're going to get into a conversation about FemDom and the female gaze in. Just getting in the right spot. In role play, in performance art, and in production, really specifically. So, for anybody new to the scene all around, my work that we'll get talking about is usually very frequently seen as something that's super welcoming and good as being introductory for people starting out in kink. So I hope that this workshop is helpful for anybody in that sense. Just for any green bananas, welcome to the fruit basket. And for any saged and seasoned veterans, it's nice to likely be seeing you again and crossing paths. Right, so I'm Beatrix Carlotta. I'm a cabaret artist, I'm a fetishist, I'm a writer and a creative director and producer. And my background generally as a person and an artist, I'm from America, hence the accent. I suppose basic disclaimer, I'm a feminist, so there will be politics. I'm an artist, there may be emotions. I'm Italian American, there will be hand gestures the whole time. Right, but just to kind of put that out there because it will be fun. It will be funny. It's really fun working in the arts, and we all know being a fetishist is really fun as well. But in that political sense, just wanted to brace everyone with a disclaimer. Like we might have to buckle up sometimes and over a speed bump together with male gaze interference to how stuff like this can go in kink and in art. So I'm a fetishist. I'm an artist. I'm a producer, and my background is I started out in America, fashion and fine art and performance and all of this, and I was a stripper. I was a pole dancer in that like tasty, unsavory way off the side of the highway, that kind of nothing too glamorous, that other thing. And it's very much a place where a lot of women like myself, voyeurists and exhibitionists who want to experiment and explore that part of themselves start. So just throwing that out there where there are some proud stripper roots amongst the art and higher education and all the rest of it. So I then transitioned and moved to London where I went to Central St. Martin's and I studied performance design and practice, which is just further into directing and design and production. My big thing, even back then, that I wrote about a lot was called, hey, come on in. So my big thing that I kind of wrote about a solid foundation that became a lot of what my practice is based on. I called it Performing for Performatives. And that is about this really specific production and writing craft of how do you curate performance art for spaces where your audience are performers who have come to perform, right? In character, in costume, ready for role play and to be voyeurs and exhibitionists in their own right in these spaces. So as we all know, for anybody who goes to clubs and all of this, every club does it their own way. Everyone sets it up differently depending on the needs of the audience and what they're there to get out of both the performance and the play or whatever else is going on. And I wrote about this a lot at school and in my practice because it was a big part of what I was doing. So when I came here studying and then I was working, I started out on clubs, right? So I started at a place that does not exist anymore, the F Club, for anyone who remembers that from just many moons ago. But that was where I started, and I founded a theater company there called Fetish Theater, which was very much writing about, and this is kind of what I went on to do that's just my favorite and my specialty that I became known for. I write a lot about lifestyle kink. I write a lot about, from a woman's writing perspective, these stories that are very much set in reality, but also in fantasy. And they're narrative based, and there's context and lady porn. I write lady porn. You know, the kind of thing where people thank me after, and then there's like one middle-aged man who's like, but I thought there'd be more. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't help you with that. But that's the kind of nature of a lot of my work and what I write about that's important to me, right? As a lifestyle mistress, not that I've never dabbled or worked in pro-doming, but I always use the word lifestyle to respectfully differentiate, because there are people who this is their living all day, every day. I'm a lifestyle mistress, and I like to write about we don't have enough time here to go through it all, but I like to write about, picture every possible story of how you can talk about role play, DS dynamic, and just fuller narratives of lifestyle kink for women. So, you know, some of my plays might be kind of rooted in my family, so something in the 1940s, and so I'm almost me as my grandmother. So kind of queer Catholic fetish narratives, or stories I've written. I wrote a play once, A is for apple, B is for bad, and it's about that stigma of being a woman who has this sexual identity but wanting to date and meet people. How do you just meet someone outside of the kink scene who's just actually accepting? You know, and in the story, because I'm a teacher as well by the daylight hours, teaching drama and things like that. So, because I also work in education, I had one of my plays rooted in this, which is just about, you know, it's about meeting my partner, my husband, but this story that's very hot, showing someone working in a strip club, but also then by the light of day, knowing them in other contexts, and then just the happy ending simply of not being judged and finding love in that sense. So picture tons of plays like this written about every possible, you know, lots and lots of voyeurism. It's lots of female gaze voyeurism where the role play, whether it's DS or it's a woman alone you're seeing her fetishistic life in some other way. It's a whole lot of that opening the window through to see what she's intentionally letting you see. So staged, kink heavily staged is voyeurism. But also, obviously, it's not voyeurism, it's real, because I'm really doing these things and letting you into my life when I'm not only having real play on stage with partners, but writing about my life. So I ended up working in lots of different nightclubs. So some people would hire me, commission me to, and I would get hired by a lot of, and this is really, you know, where we get into deeper conversations about female gaze, right? So I would get hired by a lot of women who come see a play, perhaps, and say, oh, I see what you're doing, I get this. And then I get commissioned because they're running some sort of event. And I get hired to produce and write plays that are designed and devised back to this specialty of like, for their environment, for their customer, the spacing and staging of the night, you know, meant to stimulate and inspire at the right moments, and then respectfully get the fuck out of the way because other people are now the performers and it's their stage and you shouldn't interfere. So as my work went on and I would get hired for different things like this, early days, I got hired to start working at Club Pedestal, which is a big part of what I like to talk about today. I'd like to talk about my role there, the type of work I was doing there, the importance of the work, and a lot of it is the overcoming of male gaze interruption to that work. Has anyone ever been to Club Pedestal? Awesome. Okay. Some familiar faces, and happy to see everybody. So for anyone who doesn't know what Club Pedestal is, it is, we just had the 19th birthday in November. It's the longest standing, biggest FemDom club in town. So it is primarily run by one older man in charge, and it is a spectacular club that creates some of the safest space. Like till this day, it's where I would recommend not just women, any newcomers, especially for queer identifying humans, anybody who's looking for like this, where's the safest place you can go have access, I highly recommend this club. But the process of booking and producing FemDom performance arts. So when I started out working there, I got there and I had an act early days called Toy. I still do it. I love it. It's one of my favorites. It's is a simple story involving a puppet that is dressed identically as my submissive. And I've told this story all sorts of different ways, right? Sometimes it's fun and they're delivering this as a present in a box. And then the fun of like the papers come out and you open it and it's them dressed as them, as a marionette. And it involves all sorts of, all the fun things you would think can go along with that. Maybe sometimes I'm tickling it and they're laughing, I'm dropping it, they're falling, I'm stomping, they're rolling, you know, all that kind of stuff. But earliest days, I had written with this in mind, wanting to perform it. And then it just went through the weirdest process with the male management of questioning everything in it and concerned about everything in it. They don't like what I'm saying about FemDom. This might not be the right thing for them to talk about FemDom and stuff like this. And then it turned into trying to change a lot of choreography. Any flyers or adverts that I was going to share, those would get censored. I don't like the lyrics you're showing. Just a lot of concern. And then I went and performed it, and of course it was just, may I please worship at your feet? Like just immediately it switched to tons of praise and almost in a sexualized manner. And upon performing there, I mean, I don't know if is anybody else here a performer, or is anybody working cabaret? Awesome. So you know just the basics of things that need to go into like safe and reasonable spaces for performers, especially once we get into fetish, right? So, you know, it doesn't matter if you're a clown, a burlesque, or whatever. There are certain kind of basic things we need to keep shows looking good and working well. And then once you get into fetish, it's an even more unique and fragile space where performers need to be completely safe and have the things they need. And, you know, I got there to perform that act. I'm still like 22 at this point, 23. This is a long time ago. So, and there was no real management, like this brilliant setup, one of the best that I'd ever seen. As far as my whole, this personal thing around my career and how to set up and devise and run events for kinky people to make it just the most for their benefit. So they're getting the most out of the show, but then also not stepping on their toes. Pedestal, like, it was one of the best setups I'd ever seen, because it's couple of hours of getting to know each other and drinks, and then there's an entire room that's just for the show, set up theater style, seats, stage that's raised, and it happens at midnight. And it's this like proper workup at the right time in the night, and then off you fuck to play, to dance, to do the rest of your night, where now you're the performers. And so I immediately fell in love with this pre-existing setup. I thought this is great, this is very well done. And then I said, but I'd like to come and fill in these other roles that are not there. Like, there was no management, there was no stage management or anybody collecting anything. There was no kind of director or curating or safety measures of any kind. There's no light, you know, it like serious, as the years went on, I'm there just like I'm printing signs that say keep out, to like keep our stuff safe. But anyway, early days, he was like, yep, come do that. So I came and I went on to fulfill all these other roles. And this is over the course of 12 years, with some moments where I had to quit to make political points, to create change. But the process of casting and curating this show, I'd like to get into what's important about it. Like, so after 12 years of working on this show, on and off, and all the ways that I was resident writer, casting director, curating, hosting, and writing like this, and then just focusing on the overall quality and production. I'd like to go over, because there were some significant differences in opinion between me and male management, what should go into a really inclusive and fun and fucking sexy FemDom show that's for everyone. I'd like to take you through the things about it that I feel are completely important and necessary, right? So, when it comes to DS acts, dominant submissive acts, where it's anything showing a relationship, right? Like, my focus is on role play when I write acts for myself and any partners I'm working with. One of the reasons I'm seen as like someone who's working very welcoming and good for introductory, like people who are new in kink, is because I like to write about romance and psychology and control and so many things about the DS dynamic other than BDSM or blood or body art, which I have no problem with any of those things, but there's a really heavy presence for those things in our scene, right? In cabaret, in clubbing, and going to see shows. And then to write about other things makes it very warm and introductory to talk about the other psychology of what goes into it. So the DS acts, booking DS acts for Pedestal, I think it's really important to not tamper with, you're still producing, but you shouldn't tamper and fuck with the acts. Like there was a lot of, he doesn't see FemDom like that. That's not FemDom. Like some triggering key phrases that are going to come up over and over. I can't see it, which is just a male gaze. Like I can't see what you're saying about women's sexuality, or that's not FemDom. That came up a lot. But in the face of like women writing DS acts that are, they're personal, they're the fetishist, they're the mistress, they're the artist. And then as, you know, whatever discipline it may be, they're the fire artist, they're the clown, they're the choreographer as a dancer. Just this deeply personal autobiographical work that women are writing. But there was a lot of tampering, and that's not FemDom, that's not FemDom. So DS acts that cover just this biggest possible range of how people want to perform together a FemDom scene, but without it being fiddled with. So just some light examples. We have a really exceptional performer, Ruby Dagger, who is a circus artist, and she climbs a ladder of swords. And she, back in the day, had wanted to do this as this act of female empowerment to show like the physical skill of overcoming the pain, the triumph, and the skill as a circus artist. But he didn't like that it requires a submissive assistant who like holds her hand as she does it, because that implied that she needed help. So then the act slowly just got fiddled with until it was like her holding swords to his throat and stuffing things down his throat. And on the other side of it, you know, speaking to her years later, this was one of the moments where I had to not do this anymore because it's hard to fight with him all the time. But yeah, she said that's, you know, I was going for this, and then it got turned into that, and there was this all the time. So a huge part of my presence as a producer there was that I was fielding interest from people and having to like overcome obstacles and phrase things differently and like sneak authentic acts in to the show, if that makes any sense. Like, because he looks at a photo and says, I can't see it. And I say, I know, but I can see it. I can just trust that I can see it, right? Can't see it, can't see it. And then you just have to find ways of like creatively getting people. A big thing I would do is I would sneak people into my act because I have a rule where he couldn't touch my acts or tamper with them. So then I would make it so, you know, Mistress so-and-so, he doesn't like the look of that. Well, here comes a double act from Mistress so-and-so and I. And that's just how it has to go instead, you know. So DS acts that are authentic. Number one on the list is things that I touch the audience, reach the audience that are important. For a FemDom community who are there to worship together, play together, and are interested in the subject. And here's a big one. Solo acts by women. This needs to be allowed. It's extremely important. I feel very strongly about it. This belief that it's not a FemDom act unless it includes the submissive. I believe that in that environment, it reaches home so strongly for people who have come to celebrate these parts of themselves to touch all the other stuff too, right? Solo acts about, you know, I always like to do glimpses into a woman's life who's a fetishist because I think it's just extremely effective. It makes everybody in the room who wants to be there for these things. It reaches you. So, like, I once did an act, it's called Delivery.
I've seen it.
Oh, awesome.
It's so good. I was literally just saying it's amazing.
Awesome, yeah. So Delivery is just one of my comedies that I do. It's like a FemDom solo comedy where it's a mistress at home taking photos for herself, for her own pleasure, or to send them to somebody she's playing with. But it's this joke of the doorbell keeps going off as another Amazon package arrives. But she's stuck in all sorts of, like, the more that arrives, the more she's putting on. So it's just the comedy of every time, you know, she's getting deeper into it. I've got the camera flashing on stage for, you know, and then ding, it goes off again. The dog's barking like fucking shit, like, and you got it, just the comedy of going and getting it. But this is an example of things that just producing a show, the whole show. You only get a few acts in it, right? And to polish it and put it together, it should include and touch on all of these pieces, like a puzzle, like a FemDom puzzle that makes everybody in the room hit with what we're doing, right? So another big one that I always had to fight like hell for is touching this space on female camaraderie in FemDom. So there's this space between mistresses that's just fucking electric, right? So my favorite example of what this means, and where one of my first moments where you experience it, and you go, yes. It was one of my first times at Pedestal when I was really, really young. I was like 21 or something. And I showed up in this really early stage, like me in my mistress outfit. I'm figuring, I had like a posh sailor looking thing with a huge wide brim hat, like I was on a yacht or some such nonsense. But I was feeling myself, and I walked up the stairs, and some much older mistress, like, literally tipped a hat at me, like, great outfit, mistress. Great outfit, mistress. And that, like, the second it happened, it's like a feeling that you just put in a bubble. And you're like, I want to touch on that. That needs to be in the show. This space that's so much more than just women dressed in any kind of, and this is not me shitting on stereotypical fetish fashion. For anyone who's ever heard any of my workshops on that, it's not that I don't love corsets and PVC and looking like Betty Page or vintage FemDom. I do. We all do because it's really fun. But there's so much more. There's so much more to all of it. And this type of space where women all know that they're the most powerful person in the room together, and they're happy to it's just a really important space. It's when women play together dominating a sub. It's when women just get off on appreciating each other because they all came out for the same thing. It's the super tangible thing that if you hit it right and polish the show overall, you hit all the points, and then people feel really, really excited for the fact that they're there. Another just super essential on this bullet lists of what makes a FemDom show important. DS acts that are authentic, play acts all around that have authenticity to them, ranging from flirting to fun to frisky to BDSM to dirtier than that and darker. But it has to have an authenticity where it is led by the woman or whoever is writing it that it's authentic to, without the prodding because it doesn't look like FemDom on the tin, right? It's just making it look like what it's supposed to be on the package, and having to intercept and get in the way and make sure that the artists are still doing what they need to. So this other bullet point that I feel is just terribly fucking essential. FemDom is very queer. FemDom is queer. It's queer. And I say that not as someone who likes pussy. I say it as someone who is just giving you a bigger picture of what's going on with FemDom, to pretend that it's ultimately terribly binary and nothing else is excluding and not seeing so much of what's really going on in the community and so much of what's really going on around that sexuality. FemDom, it's trans, it's bi, it's terribly heteroflexible. It's all sorts of innately queer in its kinks. And so I just feel that any exclusion of that in the community or in the show is not necessarily authentic to FemDom. Yeah, I'm sure I'm missing lots of things because I didn't even, I'm just going. Hold on, I'll ask you if you have questions. But yeah, so these are some of the complications that I have dealt with of what it's like to have to try to almost sneak acts in, so to speak. It's this obstacle of having to phrase things differently. Now that's not even a terrible joke. We all have our own definitions of words in our own way. We all handle the phraseology differently, but this is something else that borders and then goes into sexism, where how we choose to define, say, what FemDom is. I would argue that the things that I have just discussed in the type of work that I think goes in the show is FemDom, and it would be argued outside of this that it is not. So an example of some female camaraderie acts, and what I mean by that. After the pandemic, we did a cold open to start the show when the clubs reopened, and it was like, we're doing this again. This is happening. Because we remember, we had our we started to reopen, and they were like, nope, shit, not yet. And it just kept being very frustrating. Like, when do we do the spring blooming and then the frost comes, and we're like, what, why? No, now the trees won't bloom. It was like that with the pandemic and the club openings, we just kept trying to reopen a club, and it was like, oh no. So when it finally happened, and here it came, I did this cold open act. It's me and two female colleagues, incredible performers, Hannah Lehman and Naomi Wood, for anyone who knows these people, outstanding. So they joined me on stage, and we did this act called Peg Post-Apocalypse. And it's us in our house robes, and we have house plants and wine. And it's just us like, and it's like a table at the front, and we're just like circling with another plant that we bought, and then like wine, and the three of us circling until there are so many plants on the table, we don't know what to do because we bought too many plants, and the glasses of wine are becoming bottles, this kind of comedy. And then, boom, club song kicks in, out we burst into our fetish wear underneath, and it's just the art of us like we're making our way to the club, and then we spot each other like, we get our dance on, and then kind of expand that to the audience, like, we're back, and it went over a storm. But that's the kind of act that's like, there have been many moments where I wrote acts like that, and he would just go, no, it's not FemDom, because there's no man in it. Not even because there's no submissive in it. That, by the way, that was where I had to quit years ago, because I wasn't allowed to perform with female submissives. Women weren't allowed to perform with women. And in a very frustrating way, because the club is not actually homophobic like this. It doesn't reflect at all how he seems to feel about the club. Like, everyone's allowed to have everyone. That's not actually the fabric of the community. It's as right as it should be. He's not done anything there. But then the show, just the nerves of like, we shouldn't show women because it's spiritual to people, so women can't be. And I'm like, okay, it's just the complexities of this that went on and on. But I give this example of that cold open we did after the clubs reopened, because that's relevant. Like, just touching on this basic thing where we all want to go to this club tonight as women. That's a part of the community and something that makes people really excited to be in the audience. Touching on anything that women do alone is exciting. Touching on, and then here's the other big issue. There isn't, apparently, according to him, there isn't meant to be stripping from women. Because this is not the version of feminism he likes, and that's not FemDom. And no matter how many acts I have presented to prove this fucking point of like how it totally is, he can't see it. I can't see it. Acts I have done to include this point, I once showed up and I called it Come On Home. And it's me, well, it starts with my team of submissives, this little poly family, so 3 play partners, and they're the living room furniture they're about to be. But it's very sweet because it's them getting ready for me coming home. So it's them like scrambling around and helping each other get into position. Who's tying the cushion onto someone's back because they're the chair. Adjusting so and so's lampshade because they're the lamp. So all of the human furniture as the play partners getting into position, and then just me coming home like out of the rain after a long hard day, and all of this, but delivered choreographically as a strip. This is like sexy, control the room burlesque stuff, where each item that's coming off is going, the coat is going to my coat rack, and the brolly is shaken off and going, each thing like this. And then my chair has to like hold my heels and help take my shoes off, and then I get the mic and like sit on my chair, like, welcome to the pedestal, ladies and gentlemen, this kind of thing. But stuff like this, where no matter how many times you prove it, somehow stripping isn't relevant. There's a lot of stripping not being relevant. So that kind of stuff, where I just, as a political principle, I don't know how to get this across in 2023 any differently. If you still are telling women whether they can or can't take their clothes off in a controlled manner, where they intentionally have devised something to do this for you, to control, to have this power, I don't know how to use words other than sexist. Because I don't use that word lightly. I don't believe that because we have differences in opinions on these things, that makes you uniquely sexist. That if you see something differently to me, I'm not of that mindset where it's as black and white as that. I say this after like 12 solid years of trying to like break these walls down. How many times can you prove it on stage? The audience goes nuts. They're feeling what you're bringing, and as though he can't hear it, or as he likes to say, I can't see it. I still can't see it. And yeah, those are some of the woes of female gaze art all around. Just men saying, I can't see it, or I had hoped there'd be more nudity, or I thought, like one of my favorite moments after a show once, a man who's a photographer, he saw the show, and he liked the show. This is one of my fetish theater plays. And then he was like looking through my images with me, promo that I had made, artsy images that I had made for the show to promote. And he was looking at this one photo, and it's called Rosie Between Roles. So it's Rosie the Riveter, but it's her standing there in her boiler suit. It's shot at my house, so it's like this very long edit where it's dark in the house. The halfway point is the door opening, and then outside in the light is her in her boiler suit on a smoke break with her house dress like hanging in the sun to dry. But that the nature of the crop is very like the darkness in the house, and then the halfway point is like she's outside. And a man just came up and was like, so what you want to do? And he just like put his hand over half of me. He's like, you want to crop it here? And I'm just like, Jesus. I don't know how to put this. I'm using this to be playful almost because it's almost innocent. Like they don't even mean harm, but the brutal interruption of female gaze to the point where like they can't see it. But I just wanted to talk a bit about the roles that I was playing at Club Pedestal and things about it that I just found deeply important. I had to sneak a lot of queer identity into that show. I had to sneak a lot of women taking their clothes off to dominate a room if they wanted to into that show. You know what I mean? Yeah, so how am I with time right now? Okay, cool, very cool. So, yeah, I mean, it went on I did so much work at this club and there were so many shows, so it's really hard to narrow down what it is, to pinpoint, to like really give the right points of things that were important. So one of the more recent shows that I did that I just was so terribly proud of, I'm going to focus on that because it was such a good, like, to show it as a show and what it really meant. It was the 19th birthday of Club Pedestal back in November. And wasn't the first birthday show I'd curated, but this one like really hit home. I went for this idea of, although there were plenty of men in the show, it was like an all-female feature cast where we were doing like this highlight on talent, women of talent, who were talent in the scene all around. So the core cast was myself, an artist, a beautiful burlesque artist named Mimi Sugarpill. She's a singer. She's she's an incredible performer all around, and she has this outstanding act that I just go nuts for called Phenomenal Woman. And it's a burlesque act, but to the song Phenomenal Woman, where the lyrics, for anyone who doesn't know it, it's just taking you through note by note. Like maybe it's this about her, you know, each thing. Phenomenal woman is she. It's like the note that it lands on every time. And this woman, the talent, like she just can control, like she has you. You are hers the whole time and each single moment. It was the kind of thing where I was backstage, you know, I'm like getting costume changed, getting ready to get back out and get host again. And I had to actually come out during her act to like experience this. I have never in all my days heard them scream like this. I thought they were going to break the place down. Like they were losing it for this act. It was really powerful to hear their response like this. But so we have Mimi Sugarpill. She performed Phenomenal Woman. She closed the show by singing us Happy Birthday and leading us through the song, and we sang with her. The other act was Victoria Rose and April Fiasco. So now these two women are really badass sex workers and comedians and burlesque artists, and they're event organizers. They run things like Sexquisite and Cyber Tease, and just kind of totally running their own world in this territory on these subjects that are just as relevant as can be. And they came and brought a double act where they dommed each other, then got a sub out from the audience and just both went to town, and it was real special. And then the other big act, this is one like commenting on things I find important and why. Victoria Rose performed her act Secretary. I don't know raise your hand if you're familiar with the film. Right? Yeah, exactly. So she very famously has the act she comes out and does as the character, but like full on, like with the thing with like notes in her mouth that she comes and like delivers to you in the front, you know what I mean? And it's just a scream. Like it's such a good one. And it's such a personal fetish act. So this is the other part of it. It's about the hosting part. We also did a cold open as a group. So me, Mimi, Victoria, Rose, and we had all of the house slaves at the pedestal who were a part of the show. I developed a relationship with them as time went on, and I would curate and write these really fucking cool acts that we would do together as like big cold opens at the beginning. And that's what we did with this. We did a cold open. One of my acts is called Salon. Do it all different kinds of ways. This one was me and the girls, all three of us, like we were getting ready to go to the club. We were getting ready for pedestal. We're going to the salon, but of course, the salon is just it's submissives who are human furniture. You know, it's who's there doing the pedicures and the manicures. The waxing station was us waxing them. You know, I came out in a big hat and a hood, and then the hat comes off to reveal that the hood has like ropes to tie. So the subs come out holding like an array of ponytail options to pick from. So that it was
I thought I recognised you.
You know, and like the girls helping pick, like, oh, do that color. You know, we're picking each other's nail polishes. Back to that female camaraderie space that's deeply important of women with other women in a way that doesn't just directly do the DS dynamic between two people. But so this was the show. Picture the whole cast of powerful women opening like at a human furniture salon with the male subs helping them like primp and prune and get ready to put on this show. And then going into these really personal acts, phenomenal women, everyone just screaming with excitement, capturing the most important thing of like what we're here to worship. And then going into really personal acts by sex workers, creative stuff that they wrote. Double acts where it's between them, it's between submissives. And then with secretary, and this is where the hosting is really important. Not just casting. And I was there kind of having to field people coming in and rephrase it for Derek. They pitch me something that involves burlesque, and I have to go, it's a FemDom act because you can't hear the V word, you know, that kind of stuff. So when it came to this show for the birthday, it was this cold open. It involved stripping. It involved DS acts. It involved something as personal as secretary. And the way I introduced secretary as the host, and this is why it's really important, it's about curating it all together and then presenting it with deeply personal meaning as to why this is going on and what we're all going to enjoy about it, right? So with secretary, I said, you know, I acknowledge the space in our lives that cinema plays. Cinema and television as fetishists when things started to enter from literature all the way into TV. And those moments that really kind of help make us who we are because we see something in a movie or we see something in a magazine and it helps to like help us get into figuring ourselves out. And I say, you know, maybe it was Eartha Kitt as Catwoman for you. Maybe it was this scene in that movie, this scene in that movie. But these moments are such a big part of us, and this next one, you know, we're not gonna have a dry seat in the house from this, and it's gonna hit home with a lot of kinksters. It's gonna hit home with a lot of kinksters what we're about to do. And then I put it to that space of, you know, doms get ready to drool, subs get ready to worship. Victoria Rose doing secretary, and of course everyone loses it because we all fucking love that movie. It's such a part of what made a lot of us who we are and figuring things out. But these are the kind of things that would never be allowed in the show. A woman in a submissive outfit doing a scene from a movie where she played the sub. And here, the woman doing it is a pro-dom. She's a pro-dom, she's a choreographer, she's a producer, she runs her own events. But it's this like implied personality issue. And just, this is a big part of what I was doing. I was the female gaze person who has the eye to see it, has the skill set to execute it all at a professional level, and has tried to have the patience to like navigate around the male gaze, I call it a womb owner shuffle. We all know the dance because we've been doing it for a really, really long time. We know it. The moves, it goes 2 steps forward and 10 steps back, just over and over again. 2 steps forward and 10 steps back. But yeah, now more than ever, fuck the patriarchy. And this was my, and this was just an attempt at explaining the terribly personal things about what I feel should go into this and what I tried really hard to do with it for a whole chunk of my life and career like this. I did have to resign in the end again because every decision has to be run by them, and every, the birthday show, I got an email this long. We see FemDom differently, and then there's the gaslighting. Didn't we say you're just a performer? No, at no point did we say that. So it's hard to take that much extra energy just to keep making sure the right people were getting in the show. My current solutions, I've started a new event. I know it's not a 600 capacity, biggest, best one in town, but I started a new event. The current one, it's speakeasy style. It starts May 4th. It's hosted by myself and Mistress Ruby Dagger. So it's Fetish Theater, my company, and Fatal Femmes, her company. And it's a female gaze cabaret and play party, starring lots of wonderful artists and yes, and equipment, and it should be a very fun party. Yeah, I mean, so does anyone have any questions or anything they want to know about or ask or say?
How do we get on the guest list?
Can I be the furniture?
Yeah, you're on. You're in the cast if you want it, babe. We performed together a good amount of times now at Club Pedestal. Yeah, you can vouch for the house slave acts and the.
Yeah, as one of the house slaves from Pedestal, sometimes just being part of the crew, you have the opportunity, and like as soon as you get, do you want to be part of the performance? It's like, yeah. And they have all the nerves and everything, but essentially all you have to do is stand there and be a good boy.
You've done many things more than just stand there. You're underrating yourself as a performer, babe. No, but so a method of creating just more inclusive acts and really sincere stuff with members of the community who actually want to play. That's why it turns into like, do we have any house slaves who are exhibitionists? Do we have anyone who wants to be humiliated if this is humiliating to you? Or is anyone a performer who's thrilled by this? And so we got into more and more just all sorts of very, very fun group acts and like cold opens. I just am forever trying to pretend like I'm like, this is my kinky SNL, like it's not SNL, but I'm pretending I'm doing cold opens with and live from Pedestal. It's Thursday. Does anybody have anything they want to say or add?
When you talk about the female gaze side, do you think that's linked to gender or the gender they identify with, or do you think it's a way of thinking?
I didn't hear the first part of the question.
So there was actually one question, but I worded it really badly, so I'll have another go. So when you talk about female gaze,
Yes.
do you think that's a way of thinking, or it's linked to gender or gender identity?
Well, it's complicated when you get into like the role play element of something. So if we're just talking, I can't emphasize this enough. I am not saying that FemDom is led by women and the sub doesn't act like that's not at all the conversation about consent or how that authentically works. I'm not saying that role play is like 100% led by a dominant and not a submissive. We all know that's not it. It's heavily led by the submissive, really. It's a protective fantasy, which is a lot of what I like to write about with as more the protective role. But when it comes to art and trying to do this, it's just interesting where there's either interruption or lack of understanding. Like again, it's this I can't see it narrative. And it's not, this is why I say with the sense of innocence, like it wasn't just one man who ever said that to me. That's why I joked and said the story about this guy who actually like covered my photo. This is where I would crop it. It's just like a not fully seeing, not, and to some extent, with forgiveness, how could you, it's not your perspective, it's someone else's. But I do think in the club scene and in how things go, there needs to be some type of improvement around being flexible with allowing it. I don't know if I answered your question, actually.
Well, there was more to say. So, is it having a female gaze audience? Is it linked to only being female?
No. I think it's a femme identifying all around. I think it's a queer perspective. That also, that gets all sorts of layered and political. Like some men who have given me grief more than others are just gay, cis, white, male, like there's a lot of places where the femme perspective doesn't fully get in or get seen. But no, I don't think it is this literal thing about biological femininity. I think that it is a bigger spectrum where it's just about trying to also work around female gaze. It's more about that as well. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. No worries. Yeah, does anyone else have questions or thoughts or feedback? Yeah.
Some of the resistance also not be related to sort of a misunderstanding that women can be switchers, and that having submissive side doesn't take away from your ability to dominate and be dominating.
Yeah, I mean, so this is where back to the show and what it looks like, and then the environment in the club. The environment, again, it's like I still would recommend my most high recommendation for everyone, queer humans. Then, it's just a safe, truly attempting at being a female gaze space in a very safe way. So, that's all super represented in the community. And then it's this thing about trying to get that accurately on stage and what you're pointing out. And that's what I pointed out. That's why I phrased it the way I did when I did that introduction around the Secretary Act, where I joked, doms get ready to drool and subs get ready to worship, because you're having this female identifying artist who's about to perform this act. It is completely dominant in the fact that she's going to dominate the whole room. It's not actually a submission, but it's making this art that's submissive in a very switchy way. And it all needs to be very welcome. This is the thing, like stripping, the preferred method of how they like to do it, if it's not me, but Derek's approach, it's very kind of in this mindset of, like I said, we want to see Magic Mike. Like we're all just waiting for Chanham to, that's the energy, as though it's just like man meat, cis men stripping for the ladies, as though that's like encapsulating what a dominant woman wants to see. Now, I'm not against it. It's real fun. I'm always gonna love having Dave Barrelaw. Like I'm into it. We're all into it. But it is just such a bigger spectrum, and I feel very strongly like it needs to include all sorts of submissives, and it especially fucking needs to include female submissives if that's arising. If someone actually presents and says, I have XYZ act, this is important to me. It's just about the overall production of fitting it into the show correctly with the other right things. You would take that and you would blend it correctly with a really brilliant, one of my favorite BDSM acts to hire that's quite hardcore is Saint Raven. It's Venus Raven and Tainted Saints. They are a couple. They're a lesbian couple who are into extremely hard BDSM, and they are brilliant thespians. Like, it's just some of the best show you'll ever. And I love booking them for the authenticity, because this is a real relationship. But it's an example of you would blend that with the right submissive strip, and just kind of piecing the puzzle together the right way every time. But that's hard when if it doesn't look a certain way in the still image or a video, it doesn't make it, that kind of thing. But yes, that's how I feel. Yes.
Thanks. This is so interesting. I really
having such a good time hearing the stories. My question is around, I think there are kink acts that can, and kink play that can come from traumatic and difficult places for people. And when you're working that through in kink, I think that's very different from when you're working it through in performance. And I just kind of wanted, I don't think this is going to be worded very well as a question, I just want your thoughts on how to use that and maybe coach performers through acts who are developing acts on this so they're still entertaining. Because I think it's really tough. I have performed before, I don't know if you remember years ago. But like the acts that I'm talking about, I've stopped performing it because it's hard. But I think there was a really difficult line between what I was trying to say, and sometimes audiences got it. Sometimes they didn't, because they didn't identify with the experience that I was having or whatever. But I've also seen people bring traumatic experiences on stage. It may not be kink related, it may be to do with racism, sexism, transphobia, etc. And a lot of the time I'm like, I feel like with more coaching we can get you to a place where this act does all the things you're wanting to do, where it doesn't alienate people who haven't had the experience, it brings them on with you. It doesn't feel like such a drop in the show entertainment wise. You've seen Ruben K, you must have done. Yeah, Ruben K does a fantastic job of doing it too. Like takes you to a place where you're like, oh my god, I'm broken, and then you're laughing, and then you're broken again. But I just wondered what you thought on how performers can get to that place and do that.
Well, it's interesting because there are different parts to that. So it depends on the space, the show, and what you're trying to get out of an audience. Because there are people who like their proudest moment is that like someone in the front row threw up, and I'm like, okay, but if that's what you're, I don't say that with judgment. I said it in a cunty voice by accident because I was being funny, but I say it without judgment. If your catharsis is trying to make other people uncomfortable because you're an artist who's going for your discomfort is the progress I want, then that's one thing. I'm more in your boat where I like to joke with people that my process is that I had the sand and I'm going to give you the pearl. I'm going to polish this with all my trauma, and then I'm going to make it quite disguised on stage as something that's either very beautiful so people feel moved even though it's dark, or jokes in the right places so that it's comforting but totally commenting on the heavy thing. I think it's just a super personal thing for each artist, what it is you want out of your audience. So like, the process of making it the pearl instead of like the sand. It's just about keeping the feelings you're getting out of them as authentic, but with the right construction and release so that it's like we feel relief that we went through that together. I have one, it's outside of kink. Yeah, it's outside of kink. Let's say it's outside of kink. It's like a clowning act. But I have one that I did. It's one I used to do about depression, and I would do it with a clown mask. And it was all about like really long the ribbons that I was pulling it with. And it would be like ballet of like who I have to be better for other people, and then it comes off and it would be, like horrible makeup underneath of like my skull mask. I would go into this like really more surreal choreography, but this was like early days of dealing with something. How do you take something difficult and then polish it and make people feel release rather than going all the way down with you? A version of it I did during the pandemic that ended up what it was. It's called Pierre en Bleu, and it's me with a clown mask on a stick, really glamorous. Like I blended it with like flapper depression. Right, so it's a really heavy act on depression. The act is essentially on like, I'm never going to see my mother again, our dog died. Like, it's a dark act. You wouldn't know. I mean, you would, but this is what I mean, where it's like polishing it a certain way. So it's this very sad act that's very poetic, and then it goes into a lip sync that's very like taking depression to a place of camaraderie. The lyrics, it goes into the song about, my favorite color is blue. But it's very, it makes it our depression. Like at one point I take the wino bottle and I start singing into it for part of it, and then I like encourage you guys to sing back with me. I'm like passing balloons to you. It turns it into a clown act. that's about sadness, but where there's like a playful space where you can feel that this is sad, but we also all kind of get there together and celebrate. Yeah, I don't know if this answers your question. I just think it's super personal for every performer every time of how you're devising something of
No, I think you've got it. It's
Having
between the
release.
camaraderie, the inclusivity of
mm,
I'm not having this journey alone
mhm.
and making you watch it with and bringing you in, and
Yeah.
then there's the relief. Those
Yeah.
are the 2 points that I think nailed it.
Yeah, I mean that's what I've experienced over and over when I try to do this with my dark art. I had one at Pedestal where someone specifically used the word catharsis, and they said I was pretending I was you on stage. And I was like, but it was during a moment where my partner and I weren't going to be able to get pregnant, kind of realizing that, but trying. And it starts with me solo coming out in a crimson dress, biting an apple inquisitively, and then pain all starts to kick in as my period comes, and like the dress ends up I'm naked and it's just the fabric as the period. And then we come back out for a second act. Myself and 2 other women, now all of us in crimson gowns, heavily pregnant. Tons of apples, and we're like collecting the fucking apples. Yeah, we want it. We know it's coming. We don't care. Yeah. And by the end of it, we're shaving my head and like spitting apples at them. And you see what I mean? It's not that we're like, woo! But at the same time, there's such an energy of us in the room when you try to bring something dark like that people have felt. But it just makes it so theatrical and exciting by the end that I think people connect to it in a way that's not bringing them down, but bringing them like, yeah, fuck yeah. These are some examples that come to mind from my work of how I've tried to overcome that and make it uplifting and entertaining, but still just giving you all my truth, all my trauma truth. Yeah, hope that helps you. Anybody else?
So what I'm hearing is that you've had some, to sum it up, some artistic differences with the management and
Yes.
some frustrations over the years,
Yes.
and then you've gone, fuck it, I'm gonna do my own event. Can I expect, is that you doing everything that you have been talking about today?
As far as being the show.
Yeah,
Yeah,
in terms of
yeah.
like your artistic limits, is it you
Yeah.
full throttle?
The show coming up that will be happening at like the Hand. We've got Mistress Wings Chan. She did a really great double act with me at Pedestal recently, a group act. But she's an incredible pole dancer, and where we're doing this, we have like an upstairs and a downstairs, and downstairs we have a bunch of poles. So she'll be joining us like a cabaret upstairs, but when we open up upstairs, and then downstairs she'll go do a pole dance as well. We have Mimi Sugarpill doing Phenomenal Woman and singing. We have Pat L, Mistress Pat L. So this is a brilliant one, right? This artist, she came and performed at Pedestal, but another person who I had to like, not to say sneak in, but if you were to look at photos of her work, you go, oh, that's not FemDom, that's not. But she had everything prepared, but she knew what she was going to do, that she was going to put a FemDom act together. So her work is as a Bollywood burlesque. It's gorgeous. It's very powerful, very goddess shaped, but she's just a very talented costume designer and choreographer. And she wanted to do this great political femdom act where she was Pretty Patel, and then she has Boris. It's so good. It was so good. It's such a good act. It's so good. But she's coming to perform at like the Hand. So like this is the shape of the show. It's like some group acts, some stripping, some DS dynamic work, but stuff that I'm so excited that there'll be pole dancing. There'll be a woman pole dancing because she likes it and she wants to, and she's a choreographer, and she's gonna dominate the room with it. Just the craft of how these things all can be done just so. But yes, you can expect all of those things. I don't know where it's gonna go as far as like. It's not that I left and I'm starting my own event. It's that I had to leave. Like it was a lot of unraveling my own time and just not ever going to even admit what I was doing. Just the kind of person where you're like, I think it's sexist that you won't admit I direct this. And he'll be like, I'm sorry you feel that way and you're a very creative performer. Like, yep, Yep. Yep.
How did you not tailor them?
I started young and you get sucked into, because it starts with like flattery, where other people don't recognize, and he's pretending to recognize female gaze, and then as it goes on, like, oh wait, no you don't. Oh shit, you do. Yeah, and I didn't mean this to be a shitting on the management. I just needed to clarify after that many years of seriously caring about this and putting a lot into it. I just wanted people to know about FemDom and the female gaze and what it's like to try to produce a show like that in opposition to a male gaze who often can't see it because it's for us to see. Yeah, and so for anyone who's ever seen the show or been a part of the show, that's really amazing, and I'm glad that you ever came and saw any of it. For anyone who wants to see more, I've got an event coming up soon on the 4th. If you want any more questions about that. Yeah,
What's it called? Where is it?
it's called Bite the Hand.
Right.
Bite the Hand.
Clever.
Yep. You like that? We get it. We get what's going on. Anything else though about it? Did anybody have any comments?
Did
or
you say where it
questions?
was?
It's at a very secret location.
Oh,
So I will send you the link.
good.
Because it's small, it's like small and secret. It's a smaller capacity.
Did you say Patson?
Hmm?
Did you say Patson?
Yeah.
Should have done it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'll tell you too, babe. Don't worry. I'll tell you all about it. But yeah, the current cast, it's it's Mimi, it's Pat, it's Wings, myself, Ruby. So we have a whole show and then a whole play party as well in a cool secret location for anyone interested. Yeah. Is that about done? Okay. Unless anyone has anything.
Is there like a website or an Instagram where we can learn more about what's coming up for you?
Yes. So my Instagram, as Beatrix Carlotta, as a cabaret artist, it's at Designed by VC. That's my Instagram, and then my company Fetish Theater is at Fetish Theater. But I can find a way of potentially releasing that other places where, like the LAN website or something, if you want to have some links to get it. There were lots of photos, but I forgot the cable to connect it to the bigger screen. So I apologize, but
We
yes.
only had one spare.
So, but yes, that's a good point. If you want to see more of my work and actually see photos and videos and stuff, I'm on Instagram at Designed by DC. I'm on Instagram for Fetish Theater. I'm on Twitter for some reason. But I'm on Twitter as Beatrix Carlotta if you want to see that as well. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for joining me in this.